when I saw that turn, I said, oh shit, put my foot on the brake, threw it in reverse. As I started to back up, he jumped out of the truck, immediately raising an AK-47 and started dumping rounds into my vehicle.
I am Robert Asencio, and beside me I have my partner, co-host, Chief David Magnusson, retired police chief and military historian. Today on Vets and Badges, we will introduce and discuss with Sergeant David Alercia, a police officer with the city of Slatington, Pennsylvania. He was involved in a shootout where an armed subject shot him as a result of fighting his arrest. Hi, David. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you doing?
Great, man. Great. David, on August 1st of the year 2020, you were involved in a shootout. Let's frame it up.
Okay, so a little bit backtrack on that is July 31st, the gentleman went into Cigars International to get cigars. It was obviously the height of COVID at that point in time. He couldn't go in without a mask. So the clerk advised him, you can go outside, we'll give you the cigars outside and do the exchange. And he didn't like that. He swiped some cigars as he's walking out the store, turns around, shoots off 3 rounds at the clerk and patrons outside. Not striking or hitting anyone. He's wanted for attempted homicide at that point. After that, they get a possible address in where I work in the Borough of Slatington in Lehigh County, Pennsylvania. During that time, my detective gets a phone call to check the address. It was not a confirmed address at that point. He sees the truck pulling away. He starts following it. During that time, he's following this pickup truck. He sees that it's weighed down and has all kinds of supplies in the bed of the truck. He loses sight of him.
So this is the end of the shift. Subject's not found. Everybody, your shift ends their tour. You go home, right?
Yeah, and there was no warrant signed at that night.
Okay.
So the next morning, I come into work, 7 o'clock a.m., start my shift. I get briefed from the oncoming shift going off, and he's typing away, and he's very good at what he does on the job. I figured he had someone in custody and for drugs or something in that nature. And he's like, no, you're not going to believe this. Informs me that the suspect came back to the residence and is currently up at the apartment.
That's pretty ballsy, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, to come back.
So I immediately call my commander, get his voicemail, just brief him, hey, we're probably going to get a call out today. This guy's wanted for attempted homicide. There's the potential information that we gathered that he's probably armed with an AK-47 along with other weapons. And I don't see this guy moving at all. And I initially went a block away from him to his apartment to go up to see if I could see the vehicle in the parking lot. And I couldn't see it. So then I called the off-going shift saying, hey, I don't see his truck there. He's like, no, it's actually still there. You can't see it from the off street. You actually have to go up the alley, which I didn't want to do because I didn't want to, if he was possibly looking out, that I would give my presence and he'd be on to us.
So you set up on the guy, you set up, I would imagine you call for backup and take it from there.
My actual next phone call was to my wife, who's actually a retired New York City police detective. She was actually still on the job at the time of this incident. And I called her and I said, look, if anything goes bad today, because of all the parameters and all measures that had taken place already that have failed, that I said to her, I was like, if anything happens today, make sure you sue the hell out of my borough and also the police department.
So you just got a feeling, you had a feeling that something's going to go on. Something's going to go on, just that vibe you had. And that's the feel I'm getting from what you're saying.
Because brother, I can't imagine what must have went through your mind to call your wife. Man, I'm intrigued. Tell us more.
Okay, so at that point, like I said, I didn't see the truck yet. I was like, well, I got to go up the alley to see if it's there. So I drive up the alley. Noticed that the truck is still in its parking lot, so I knew he was still in the apartment. Right next door to that apartment is a bar which actually serves breakfast in the mornings and has outside seating. So the bar was actually packed in because it was a beautiful sunny day and everybody was there for breakfast sitting outside. When I went up the alleyway, I know this location very well, and I saw that there's patrons outside, and also there was no good tactical way to approach this residence without him seeing us first, because he had high ground on us, along with the fact that there was no cover to approach this apartment complex as well.
That's a tactical nightmare.
Yes, it is, and it was.
But he had it figured out from the get-go.
Yeah, you did.
He had
say
it
that.
figured out from the get-go. This is what's going to happen. Setting up the stage, planning ahead.
That's a sign of a good cop.
Oh yeah,
Good street cop.
Yeah,
Continue,
sharp,
please.
tactical street cop. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for that. So as I continued to that standard and saw that the truck was there, I now park off street where I was before. However, instead of the lower position, I was now 2 streets above where the apartment complex was, still knowing and figuring his pre-planned route from the day before. I then immediately contacted my chief of police, advised him what was going on. He was kind of already up to speed in some sport type, knowing that they tried to contact him the night before of everything going on. I requested to see if I could get our tactical team up and set up on the apartment complex. And they said, well, we don't have confirmation that he's definitely there. If we know that the police department that has the arrest warrant is getting the search warrant and does get a search warrant, yes, we can contact the TAC team.
Is that because they're call out?
Yes, we're a call out team. We're actually a part-time team. So we do training twice a month, along with, if there's a call out, basically it's a response from people off duty or on duty. And it's a county-wide team. So it's police operators from different boroughs and townships that come together to implement the team.
Which is something that you must have gone through as a police chief, the decision whether to call out the teams or not.
In Havelock, it was special response team. We had that call out a couple times, and the boots on the ground that ran it, they made that determination to run it by me. But I if that's what they felt, they were there, do it.
That's overtime usually puts a constraint on the department.
Yeah, but time is of the essence on these things. When you have operators out there in the field that know what's going on at that point, just run with it, get it set up, especially in a situation when attempted murder.
Big time, man. The guy supposedly is armed with an AK and
and God knows what else. Right.
Yeah, so
I was intrigued. Please continue.
So my chief at that point didn't give that authority to do so. Turned out later in time, I thought about it. My commander actually at that time was on vacation. So I then went down to my assistant commander to give him a briefing of what may happen for that morning. As I'm sitting there and waiting this out, my brother is actually a police officer in a neighboring township next to where the arrest warrant was issued from initially. I asked if he knew the detective that was handling the case. He said yes, and he'd have him contact me. And I said, I'm sitting on the house now. The truck is outside. I needed a search warrant for the apartment. I was like, I don't care if you use state police's CERT team or you use our team, but it definitely should be a TAC team to make this arrest. In term of all this, and I was making phone calls after phone calls. Now, this has made news all over the place that this guy's wanted for attempted homicide. People in the apartment complex knew about this, and all of a sudden started seeing this guy start moving inside the apartment, coming out of his apartment and loading his truck up. So they obviously notified the 911 system, who dispatcher then contacted me and informed me of this gentleman that's wanted for attempted homicide.
David, did the caller say what he was loading into his vehicle?
They were informing initially that he came out of the apartment complex holding totes and placing the totes into the back of the truck.
Oh, you say totes, bags?
Like kind of like bags, but the plastic containers
Got it.
that you store stuff in. Not knowing what was in there, they said he was coming out with these totes. Then I was like, okay, I'm well aware of it. I requested at that point then to have the neighboring police department to come up, block off the roadway so no more vehicles could go up that direction to be in the line of possible fire if it would turn into a shootout. During that time, I'm still getting radio dispatches advising that the gentleman came out with 2 ammo cans, went back into the apartment, and came out with 2 more ammo cans.
That must have been a pucker factor right there if I ever saw one.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. Yeah. And at that point, now I get the okay for the TAC team to respond up. Now, it's good. Usually we're too far into this now by the time they're going to get there. We're like, usually response time is probably, depending on the territory and jurisdiction where everybody's coming from, it could take up to 30 minutes to a half hour to an hour to get there.
Man, you're at crunch time. You're on red zone all 110%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then in the intern, state police arrive. I brief them of what's going on. Now I get another dispatch that the gentleman just came out with a rifle. Unknown what type of rifle.
By the way, you're being kind, calling him a gentleman, but go ahead.
Another gentleman comes up, or I get another dispatch that he comes out with a rifle, puts the rifle in the car. Didn't know what kind of rifle, but put a rifle in the car. I was like, okay. At this point, state police is screaming at me. There's about 5 or 6 troopers there, one being a corporal for the barracks they're out of, and they're saying, oh, we need to get down there. We need to go down there. I was like, no. I was like, we don't need to go down there. I was like, and gave them the explanation why. As I told before, no good cover, innocent civilians in the area, and so forth, and that he had high ground. At that same time, I'm still on the phone with my chief of police and on speakerphone, and he asked me, he's like, what's going on? I was like, you're not going to fucking believe this. State police want us to go down there. He's like, well, why not? I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? I was like, I just told you why we can't go down there. He's like, yeah, but why not? I was like, I just told you. And he's still out of it. I was like, all right, fuck it, let's go. As we scramble for the cars, because I tell them then, okay, let's go then. Thank God it went the way it did. And the gentleman actually pulled away from the apartment complex at the same time we're scrambling for the cars. The gentleman, suspect, takes the planned route just as I thought he would. We come to a 4-way intersection on 2nd Street in the Borough of Slatington, and we're at a 4-way stop sign. I'm head to head with him. He's looking at me, I'm looking at him. And I see that blank stare on his face, and I zoom in in on him. He's like kind of sitting and waiting, like, does he know?
Hold that thought, brother.
Mm-hmm.
You've been there.
Yeah.
Where you're staring at the subject. All kinds of thoughts are going through your head.
It's a good and bad, ugly moment where all the eyes are looking at each other and waiting for somebody to make the first move. Remember that part in the movie where you see nothing but the eyes and they're just looking back and forth to see somebody makes the first move? That's the feeling I get listening to this, because this is intriguing.
Is that the way it was going? Is that what happened?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I kind of figured what he wanted to do, and I didn't know if he knew yet that I knew who he was and what was about to happen or not. And that's what's going through his mind.
And tactically in the car, you must be like setting up, like, if you already have the preset notion of, planning out the travel plan, the travel route, being one step ahead of that guy, you got to be in your car thinking, I am going to be setting up for this possible shooting encounter. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yes, I am.
Please go on, man.
As being an operator, I had my tactical weapon with me, which is an M4 that's semi-auto, full auto. Do I ever shoot on full auto? No. But we practice it, obviously. At that point in time, we're at this four-way intersection and doing this stalemate. Another car comes up the street and literally parks right next to where this truck is. As this car parks, I'm like, oh my God, please don't let anything happen right now, right here, because of this person that just parked. As that car parks, a male gets out of the front driver's seat and gets his two kids out of the back seat of the car. No difference of age in between 3 and 5 years of age. And they approached their house to go into their home. So at that point, I knew this suspect wanted to get out of here and hit the main street to get to the highway. So I turned my turn signal on to make a left to push him the opposite direction, hoping that would make the change for him. And I waited him out. He made that turn the way I wanted to direct him towards, and he made a left turn. So I started to follow him a little bit, obviously giving him his space. The first stop sign he came to, the next intersection, he did a California stop, meaning he didn't come to a complete stop, but made an attempt to stop at that stop sign. At that point, okay, I kind of figured he knows what's up. He knows I'm on him. He made the right turn at that stop sign. The second stop sign, he actually wound up speeding up and going right through the stop sign. At that point, I determined that I can't get him because if so, it was going to be a high-speed pursuit. So I informed dispatch that I was going to be making the attempt to stop. And at that point, I turned my lights on and siren. He drove all the way onto the left side of the roadway. The next intersection he came up to, he made an evasive turn and put his truck diagonal in the middle of the intersection to make his truck as cover for himself. With that, when I saw that turn, I said, oh shit, put my foot on the brake, threw it in reverse. As I started to back up, he jumped out of the truck, immediately raising an AK-47 and started dumping rounds into my vehicle. I put my foot on the brake. My rifle was already set and ready to go. I already had it in condition 1, which means there was a round in the chamber and ready to fire. I came up with my foot on the brake, still in gear, and started engaging through my windshield onto the suspect as he's returning fire on and giving fire on to me. During this time frame, state police now are tailed behind me, and they stop directly behind me, off to a little bit off of my side. But they couldn't get around me because it's a small, narrow roadway, and they couldn't get around me.
Yeah, and you were between the subject and them, right?
I'm sorry?
You were between the subject and the officers, right? The state police. So
yes, sir.
You were literally in the line of fire.
Yes.
How do you like that?
Listen, this is this whole setup. I mean, Dave had it right from the get-go. I mean, he knew what this guy was going to do. He was able to call the shot of how this is going to play out. What he didn't call for, I'm sure, was that this guy's going to come up there and start firing on him with an AK-47. But he put himself in the best position he could to win this.
Yeah, that probably made the difference between officer survival and non-survival.
Yeah.
Prior to this all going down, I actually put EMS, requested them to stand by at a certain location, and also put medevac or medic flight on standby in case something did turn ugly. So in the interim of all this with the shootout, I'm getting heavy gunfire laid down on my patrol car. As I'm engaging through there, I'm trying to create big enough hole through my windshield to have direct line of fire, knowing that I needed direct line of fire out of my windshield, because if not, the rounds would deflect and so forth. As I'm getting this heavy gunfire, I was like, okay, I need to get out of the car. I went to get out of the car. My sling gets caught up inside the car. Quick shut my door back and untangled where my sling was hung up on. And I then exited my patrol car.
At the same time, the guy's firing at you, right?
Yes, sir. So as I moved to my left to get cover behind a parked car, as I'm returning fire still, I paused for a second and see my patrol car out of my peripheral vision rolling back. And I literally stopped for a minute. I kind of laughed and said, "Oh, fuck." While the car hits the state trooper's car behind me.
Oh,
I was like, okay, time to go back to work. And I snapped to and started to re-engage on the suspect.
Have they engaged at all?
They did not yet. That was the surprising part, because when we did a debrief of this incident, they're like, "Oh, we couldn't return fire yet because you backed into our patrol car." I was like, "I didn't back into your patrol car. My car rolled back. I was already out of the car in the gunfight." They're like, "Oh, no. Well, there was in-car camera from their patrol cruiser that showed directly how it went, is how I initially. That it was after the fact that I exited my patrol car, and I'm halfway through the gunfight at this point till they get into the gunfight."
so Dave, are you in the middle of the street firing at this guy?
Yep.
Or are you behind cover? You're uncovered?
I have partial cover behind a parked car initially. But at some point I said, okay, he initially pied out from his, meaning he backed off his truck to get a better advantage on me initially, to get better shot on me, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was returning fire, he then moved back towards his truck to get cover. And I didn't have any type of angle on him anymore. So I was like, all right, well, I need to advance on him. So I started to tactically advance towards him, meaning I was walking and still engaging when I could, as long as I had the opportunity to. With that, I'm still getting gunfire coming at me. I feel 2 rounds that went right by the side of my head, that struck a parked car. I was like, as I said, state police now are engaging. I was like, what am I going to do here? Because I don't have a good enough shot right now. This isn't working so well. I was like, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to flank him the best I can. And I was like, looked around. I was like, okay, I'm going to retreat, go through this gate by the house adjacent to my left, and I'll go around the house and then I'll flank him on the side. So I go back. This house, unfortunately, had a 6-foot privacy fence taking the rear perimeter of the home. Turned out that gate to that house was locked. I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? I was like, what the fuck? I was like, what are the chances, you know? So then I was like, okay, well, I need to flank him the best I can. And around the front perimeter of this home was a 4-foot picket fence. So I was like, well, I'm going to flank him the best I can. So I started to advance by the sidewalk, using the sidewalk and the parked cars along as cover as I'm moving up. With that, I had shot the suspect in the hip, and the one state trooper was shooting underneath the car and skipping rounds off the ground, and actually wound up shooting the suspect in the foot. With that, the suspect throws his guns, saying, I'm hit, I give up. I have another trooper that now is running up from way behind the gunfight in itself, because he was quite a few cars back from us. He gets along my side. He moves up to the suspect to take him into custody, as I hold cover on the suspect and kick the guns away from any close proximity of the suspect that he could get his hands on him.
So you're still trying to figure out, like, stay 1-2 steps ahead of this guy, right? I mean, even though he's given up, or he says he's given up, you want to make sure that he's a no more threat to anyone, and he's taken into custody.
I mean,
Yes,
he gets shot in the foot, the hip, and as soon as he gets hit, I'm done. I mean, that's
And for those of you that will be viewing this is the reason why we're going into detail on this story, is to show the complexity, the amount of thoughts that go through these officers' heads when they're confronting an armed subject that doesn't care about anybody else, that's trying to take them out and trying to take anyone else out. Because I'm sure he was firing down range indiscriminately. Is that a fair thing to say?
100%. Absolutely.
Well, knowing what you know now, I mean, at the point that this happened, you definitely made that right decision. Well, it worked out in the sense they didn't go down; they let the vehicle come out, because those rounds would have hit them people at the restaurant. This is a Saturday, also, isn't it? It was a Saturday morning. You got a packed restaurant out there; those bullets would have been flying everywhere.
And think about it, Dave, you had the presence of getting out of the death trap, which is the vehicle.
Mhm.
We know those are coffins. If we stay in the vehicles during a shootout, chances are you're going to get pinned in there.
Mhm.
But can you imagine the sling getting caught? You trying to bail out, having to stop, get back in the car, untangle, and get out. So subject's taken into custody. You go to the station, and you realize what?
So I get to the station. I call my wife. I still have all my guns on me. I'm like, well, if they're not asking for them, I'm not giving them. So
Which
I
is
get down to the station house.
Them being the investigators, because after police-involved shootings, so he still has them on. They haven't taken it from him.
Which is in ordinary, the customary to take the guns away from the officer. That's evidence, right?
Right.
And we want to make sure the officer cool down and
Correct. And check on the officer, make
Absolutely.
sure he or she is okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, you were saying you're at the station, you get your weapons, and then you realize you call your wife, and then you realize
I called my wife. I advised her that I was okay. I was just involved in an officer-involved shooting. Her position, that what she did as a detective in New York City, she actually investigated police-involved shootings for the last, at that point in time, 7 years of her career. She comes up. By that time, they saw that I was bleeding at my arm. They're like, dude, you're hit. I was like, nah. I was like, that's just glass. The glass cut me as I was shooting through the windshield. They're like, you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm fine. It's nothing. So precautionary, they bandage it and put a bandage on it. My wife shows up. She's like, what's that on your arm? I was like, I was like, they thought I might have been hit, but it was just glass from me shooting through the windshield. So she pulls the bandage down, and she's like, no, you're hit. Why the fuck are you still here? I was like, no. She's like, yeah, you're fucking hit. She then goes to my chief of police, along with other officers, and there's quite a few people in and out of the office, obviously starting to type a criminal complaint for the suspect for the engagement he just did today, or on August 1st, 2020. And she turns to him and she's like, why is my husband still here? And the perp is on the way down in a helicopter getting treatment, but my husband is here. And he's like, well, I think state police want to talk to him. She's like, well, A, his delegate's not here. 2, he has nothing to say at this point in time, and they can come to the fucking hospital if they need to talk to him.
What injuries do you suffer?
So I wound up getting shot in the arm, in the right forearm, by a 7.62 round from the AK-47. That bullet that came in on me was actually 6 inches from my head in that gunfight.
Did you hear the whizzing sound?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Okay.
I wound up losing permanent loss of hearing in my left ear. And I actually wound up tearing my right knee from getting out of the patrol car. And then the most significant of my trauma, I wound up with severe PTSD along with the potential TB, traumatic brain injury as well from this incident.
Brother, I can't tell you how grateful we are to your service. But you just didn't serve in the police department, right? You have military experience. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, he's a Marine Corps, from 95 to 99?
Yes, sir.
Correct. Elaborate a little bit more. And I know you were in Fiji, Guam, Japan, and then in our discussions, what was very interesting was that feeling that, and I want you to, not for me to say, for you to describe that when you were talking about you weren't there for your guys when they went back in and they got deployed. Tell me about that a little bit.
So I was with 3rd Light Armor Recon as a scout, 0311. In 98, Saudi Arabia was actually acting up. We sat off the coast. Half of our team sat off of the coast 200 miles off for 4 months. We actually got an extended tour overseas. Nothing actually wound up coming about with that. We come home, I get out. In 2003, my unit was actually first boots on the ground when they declared war. So a lot of guys I served with actually went back over and were in that conflict. And I felt like I should have been there with them, and I cheated it, and I left them without me, and I should have been there with them.
A true public servant who's always thinking about service to country. David, now let's talk about this. So you have, without doubt, PTSD, and you share with us that you had some addiction problems. But let's talk about real quick the darkness that led you to founding an incredible nonprofit. It's called St. Michael's Warriors, who now your mission is to serve others who are hurting, struggling. Please, within a couple minutes, can you just share with us your thoughts on, background?
So the PTSD, like I said before and previously, PTSD, if you take American Sniper and you take the conflict when he comes home from war and how he's struggling and rage, I had the same rage. I was like, but now you multiply that by 10, and that's what PTSD is really like. That's for the viewers that don't understand really, and no one knows what PTSD is until they actually really go through it. And during that time frame, in my treatment, I went to several treatment locations. I actually went to inpatient treatment for a first responder military program. Everybody had the same story, that we're in and out, revolving door of first responders and military personnel getting the assistance they needed. But everybody had the same story. They didn't know where to turn, how to get the help they needed. By the grace of God, somehow they found out and found a program that had a first responder military program. And it was the same thing for me. I didn't know where to turn. My wife was my advocate. She actually did all the research trying to find treatment for me. My outpatient treatment, the psychologist along with my wife figured I really needed that help more deep and get me inpatient treatment. After I continued, and I still continue to this day, to get treatment for my PTSD, it was learned that I wanted to start an organization that we can advocate and direct people to where they can get help and how they can get the help. And we vet the locations that we provide information to where they could go for the assistance they need. And then we started the organization once I was actually in a better place. It wasn't until 2 years after that we actually founded the organization. And basically, we're an advocacy center where we can let them know where they can get help, how to get help, and what to expect while they get the assistance they need, along with their family members, because sometimes the family members either may go through secondary trauma, or that we can assist them, or we can also assist them in letting them know what it's going to be like and what's going on with them at these locations while they're getting their treatment, and what they're going to be like when they come home to their family, because the person is getting their treatment, but there's nothing for that family member to understand what they're going to be like when they come home. And it's going to be a little different and change for them. So we're there for them and support them in every way, in any way we can.
Outstanding. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you that's in your area, how can they get a hold of you?
Well, we're actually countrywide, and we'll assist anyone anywhere in any state of the U.S. or abroad. And they can either go to stmichaelswarriors.org, and they can go to our webpage. There's a phone contacts. There's an information center where It tells each and every board member on the board of who we are. Just about every one of us are either a combat vet or a police officer or both. So that's the best way they can get in touch with us, and we can direct them in getting assistance that they need for either alcohol, substance abuse, or mental illness, such as PTSD.
David, any last thoughts here?
Yeah. June is PTSD Awareness Month. I would submit to you, though, so are the other 11 months in the year. It's every day of the year to be
100%.
aware. And it's people like you, David, heroes that have gone through it, and you come out on the other side helping. You said something to me earlier with a similar incident of somebody else, and sort of what we discussed in a text. It didn't end well for that person. The difference with you was you got the help and you were able to. Now you're paying it forward and helping others. And that, to me, is a full salute.
For our viewers, thank you. For the community news team, the Miller brothers, Michael, Grant Miller. We can't thank you enough. Our producer behind the scene, Rachel Brummage, always there for us. You're the best.